Welcome to everybody. I'm Marty Rasmussen from Action Coach, and I am just pleased today to be able to introduce to you Wyatt Gustafson from Refer Sports. He and his partner, Huck Sirach, have started this company just in the past little over a year, but they've had a journey that started before that and even began when they were younger in their life. But they are disruptors in an industry that has not been disrupted for a very long time. And so, Wyatt, thank you for joining us. I just appreciate you taking the time to be here. I know the business owners that watch our show are going to be thrilled to be able to hear more about your business and some of the things that you two have encountered in the short time that you've been in business. So thank you for joining us.
Marty, thanks for having me. I'm glad that you reached out, got connected, and I appreciate you taking the time today to do this with me, and also to Action Coach for providing us with the platform to share a little more about what we're trying to do at Refer Sports.
Sounds great. Well, we're thrilled to have you here. And so one of the things that we find with the people that in the audience that watch the interviews is they love to hear the story. And so could you just tell us a little bit about your journey, about how you and Huck got together, how this whole concept started, and then tell us a little bit about where you are today. And I think really what people would also enjoy hearing about is more about where you see this going. So how'd you guys get started?
Yeah, so just kick off the story, we're gonna have to go way back to when Huck and I were kids, and we grew up about a block and a half down the road from each other in Minneapolis, and we were both heavily involved in hockey. And admittedly, Huck was always a little better than me at hockey. And that skill that he had allowed him the opportunity to go play juniors on the East Coast. And during that year between high school and college for Huck, he was very involved in the sports world, obviously, playing hockey all day, every day. And that allowed him the opportunity to get closer to some referees. And as he was doing that, he was hearing a lot of complaints from these referees about their jobs. Things like being paid once a month, or not being able to pick when they worked, or having to drive an hour and a half to get to a game. And Huck's entrepreneurial mind quickly started turning. He thought, this seems a little inefficient. Like, I want to make this better. And his idea at a high level was to solve these problems and inefficiencies with technology. So at the time, I was studying computer science at Minnesota, and Huck, after juniors, went to study business at Boulder. And he reached out to me and said, Wyatt, I've identified this problem. I've got an idea to fix it. Is it possible? Like, can we bring technology into this industry and simplify things? And I said, absolutely. And so from there, we got the ball rolling about 14 months ago and have been building ever since.
That's fantastic. So tell us a little bit about the business. And it's really kind of a software-driven application that, from what I've seen, kind of joins the marketplace together, right? In terms of referees and organizations that need sporting organizations that have a need for a referee. But tell us more about that and kind of what the key I guess core aspects of the app are, the business, and then how you're solving this problem that you just described.
Yeah, absolutely. So ultimately, the platform is bridging referees with people that need referees. And so there's sports organizations, although often the sports organization isn't managing their referees, they're hiring a third-party scheduler to manage their referees. So really what our platform is doing is connecting the referee to these big schedulers that are managing the schedules for sometimes dozens of sports organizations at once. But then, where we want to bring in kind of the modernization side of things and more of that gig economy approach that we often talk about is we want the market to kind of open up and become free, to the sense where these schedulers can post game opportunities, their officiating needs, the compensation they're willing to offer. And then referees in turn can see these opportunities and pick up the ones that fit their needs. And then our job at Refer Sports is to simply provide a platform that facilitates the transactions and work orders between these two entities.
So one of the things that we talked about earlier, and it's on your website too, is you're really kind of taking a page out of the playbook of like DoorDash and Uber, right? I mean, kind of eliminating first of all, disrupting a market like Uber did with the taxi industry, right? And that transportation business. But you're pretty much doing the same thing. Again, how are you working? Are you working with those big firms that you just mentioned, or is it really connecting the people on Main Street together to get a more efficient use of time and space and that type of thing?
So yeah, as you said, we're definitely taking a playbook because we look at the transportation industry, the food delivery industry, the care industry, and they are thriving using these modern approaches that often fall into this term called the gig economy. Uh, and so we are working with these big schedulers that I talked about because ultimately they're the ones that have all the games that need referees. Now, where we are today with what solutions are currently offered to referees and these schedulers are a bit outdated. They're stuck, 20, 30 years ago using old approaches. And to put things into perspective, most referees are paid once a month via check in the mail. So that kind of puts into perspective like the technologies of where we're at today. And so what Huck and I are trying to do is, the bridge between the referee and the scheduler is going to remain the same. Like that bond's not going to break. We just want to bring simplicity and efficiencies in that bridge. Things like faster payments, new methodologies of when it comes to like how do you schedule a referee? Where are you scheduling the referee? How much is the referee being paid? Right now a game on New Year's Eve is going to pay the same amount of money as a game on Wednesday evening. So could we introduce new ideas like supply and demand pricing, where there's variables to it, things of that nature. We're trying to introduce into this industry.
Yeah, that's good. I think of another example. This one's kind of dated. I think the Uber and the DoorDash is probably the better one. But I just think back to what, if you look at what Wayne Huizenga did with Blockbuster, he came into, the local Main Street communities and brought Blockbuster and all of the benefits of a big company, streamlined organizations, access to more movies, all that kind of stuff. And he really brought that to what was a mom and pop shop kind of business, and he basically consolidated that business into kind of a bigger company. I kind of see a little bit of that here, but there was a couple of points about that though. He was a disruptor because of that, but more importantly, really what happened to him, or actually after he sold the company, but what happened to Viacom when a little tiny startup came up out of Silicon Valley that started, mailing movies to people's homes on a subscription basis. And today we know that company is Netflix, right? And so, it's taken over the space. And tell us a little bit about what you see the future of Refer Sports looking like? Do you see yourself that kind of disruption in the marketplace?
That's definitely our end goal. Yeah. And as you know, like this disruption takes a lot of time and it takes precision to create, and we're fully aware of that. And so what we're trying to start with is just, stepping stone approaches. Can we get the referees on the platform and these schedulers on the platform? And then once we have that, it'll be introducing these new features, like I mentioned, like supply and demand pricing. And even something that seems, common and simple like that in today's age would be huge disruption in the referee industry. It's not present anywhere. And so, big thing that Netflix probably faced or Uber faced and that we're facing too is like, how do we get users to be open to these ideas? It's, the term that's often stated is like, you're selling your users something they need before they know they need it.
Yeah.
And so as you mentioned, it's going to take time, but like once we can open up our users to this, we see the disruption there.
Yeah, that's good. So, I think of, these different companies that we just talked about, they all started in, someone's basement or back office somewhere and or a college campus, whatever. But eventually they get to that place that you just described where they've got a user base, they have a proof of concept. And then all of a sudden everybody wants them, but they have a need for cash to be able to really expand and grow the business. How are you guys funding this? I mean, because this is I just see it as a tremendous opportunity, but is this just being bankrolled by yourselves, or do you have some investors with you?
Yeah, so Huck and I definitely aren't bankrolling this entire project as we have poor college kids, or well, I just graduated, Huck's still in college, but so the MVP of our mobile application, Huck and I funded. We put up the money for that, and then we did some further big projects on top of the MVP, although we were able to fund that with money that we won through startup competitions. So we
Wow.
won our division in the Minnesota Cup, and then Huck recently won a student pitch competition through EO, which is Entrepreneurs Organization. And then recently, after burning up that money, we've started a friends and family round via Safe Money. So family and friends are giving us money that will ultimately convert to equity once we start raising a formal seed round.
Got it. So you not only do you have the education, well, the practical experience is sports enthusiast yourself to be able to know the space, but now you've got the both of you have the education, and but now you're stepping into a totally different world that a lot of people just aren't familiar with, because once you start getting into A, B, C, D rounds, that kind of stuff, it gets complicated. So hats off to you guys. Maybe in relation to that, what if you're to reflect back on this time period, kind of, when you guys put this idea together and where you are today, is there anything in particular that jumps out in your mind that would really be beneficial for another business owner like you, or even somebody that's been in business for 30 years? Is there one thing in particular that really stands out that has helped you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so I would say, we are where we are today, not because of what Huck and I have done, but because of the support that we have got from other individuals in the entrepreneurial community here
Mm.
in Minneapolis, and especially in Minnesota. And so what we've learned is that, rather than thinking that it's embarrassing to reach out and ask for help, we've learned that it's better just to admit that you don't know things, because reality is, especially as 22-year-olds, we know just about nothing when it comes to everything you can know when starting a business. And whether we admit it or not, individuals that have 40 years of experience know that Huck and I don't know things. And so rather than trying to hide that, we've learned to just be vulnerable, reach out for help, and get the advice from those that have been in our shoes before and have conquered the problems that we face every single day. And so that support, the advice, and the wisdom that we've got from these individuals here in the community has been crucial to our success.
That's probably some of the best advice I've heard. We've done, as I mentioned to you privately, thousands of these interviews with business owners, and they've been from startups to, that 30, 40 years in business. But oftentimes we find, especially in the work that I do in coaching business owners, that they feel like they have to know everything themselves. They have to do everything. They have to be capable of it. They have to strategize. They take the garbage out on Friday night, and they have to be all things to all people. And really what I hear from you is probably some of the wisest words that I've heard recently, and that is ask for help when you need it, because oftentimes entrepreneurs and business owners feel like they're in isolation all by themselves. And so thank you for sharing that. What where I guess kind of one last question for you is, so you've been the recipients of a lot of help and advice. It sounds like because you've asked for it. So kudos to you. Do you find yourselves being kind of a resource for other people too? Tell me a little bit about how you and Huck may be giving back.
Yeah, absolutely. So this advice that I just shared has definitely been advice that I've shared with others who have come to ask me for advice. And so it wasn't long ago, actually, I was speaking in a sports management class at the University of Minnesota. And these kids were tasked with coming up with a business idea related to the sports industry. And I was there just kind of sharing our journey, our story, and general advice and things I've learned over the last 14 months. And there was a student that had a great idea, but was wondering if they could pursue it. And they said, I've got this idea, but I'm hesitant to go about it because I wouldn't know how to handle the financials. And I kind of laughed and looked at the student and said, I studied computer science. Like, I know nothing about finance, raising money, accounting. Like if I would have held off on pursuing Refer Sports until I thought that I knew everything, I would probably die of old age before I could have ever started Refer Sports because it's impossible to know everything and to plan for every scenario that you might encounter when starting a business. And so the advice that I gave to these students was just start running with it. You're going to encounter fires, but just put them out as you go. And that's advice that both Huck and I have been sharing with many that seek it.
That's great. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're already giving back. That because it's important. And as a business coach myself, I get great satisfaction every day of helping business owners achieve the dreams that they go to bed thinking about every night and figuring out how they're going to try and go from startup or from chaos to a better organized or streamlined business. So anyway, that's great. Well, as we're wrapping up here, obviously you guys have you're 14 months in, as you mentioned, but you're a business, you're operating, you're in the marketplace today. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you or Huck, either about the technology that you've developed or just to get to know you, is there a place that they can go to find you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. So great spots would either be our LinkedIn, which is just Refer Sports, or our website, just www.refersports.com. We've got a contact form on there. If you fill that out, shoot us a message. We will get back to you promptly. And so those are two easy ways to reach out. I've also got a LinkedIn. Huck's got a LinkedIn. We actively check our DMs.
Okay, that's great. Well, fantastic. Well, just before we close, any thoughts, any additional thoughts you want to share with the audience before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'd say, to the audience, especially those that might be in the signing space, the referee space, as mentioned, Huck and I have learned that there's a lot that we don't know. And so our doors are always open to advice, tips, feedback from individuals. Actually, as we're building out a web platform right now, we are actively seeking any input, any advice from people that schedule referees or referees themselves.
Okay.
The more input that we can get, the better. And so if you've got some, please reach out. We'd love to speak with you.
That's fantastic. Well, terrific. Well, thank you, Wyatt, for taking the time to join us today. And to our audience, these two guys are shaking things up. They're disrupting a very mature industry. And for some reason, I keep seeing the Ubers and the Netflixes and the DoorDashes in your future. And I just want to encourage everybody to go and look at what they do and how they're doing it. And particularly if you have, some input, as he just mentioned, get that feedback to them, but reach out to them and use that contact information that Wyatt shared, and let's continue to grow our businesses and develop our networks and continue to get to know each other. And so with that, Wyatt, thank you so much for joining us. I'm grateful for your time and appreciate all that you guys are doing. I look forward to continuing to stay in touch with you guys.
Likewise. Thank you for the time today, Marty. I really enjoyed sharing my story, and hopefully it can reach the audience of Action Coach and maybe provide a little support, a little encouragement to any of business founders watching this.
Yep, sounds good. I'm sure it will. Okay, thanks again, and look forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks, Marty.